Greetings, fellow barbarians. It is I, Alan Odinson, and you are listening to the Barbarian Lounge podcast. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. We're steady cranking the shows out, and I'm going to tell you, this podcast is rising ever so quickly, and I have no one to thank for this other than you, the listeners. I want to thank you so much. We got a lot of things coming up in the future, and it is your listens, your downloads, your shares, and your comments that is allowing this show to grow. Let's get a few things out of the way real quick here before we can hit our topic of today. Our website, for those of you who happen to be listening for the first time, or maybe you've been living under a rock and you're not aware of where you can find out information about the number one podcast in the world right now, you can go to thebarbarianlounge.podbean.com, go there and subscribe, and you will now be a part of the number one show that's growing in this nation today. A favorite of all barbarians across the globe, the Barbarian Lounge. Also, you can check us out on iTunes. Look for the Barbarian Lounge podcast on iTunes. You can find us there as well as Stitcher. Also, Tuesday nights on UCY.TV, our show is aired there. They're going through some of our older episodes right now, so a lot of you that need to catch up, that's a fine place to do it. Go to UCY.TV, look for the Barbarian Lounge there, and every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Yes, we are prime time because that's the only place you would put the Barbarian Lounge. We are prime time, and you can listen to us there. There's a live chat that goes on during the show, and you can comment there and talk to other wonderful people about the phenomenal show that you have been listening to. Our sponsor for today is Odinson Archery. Odinson Archery. Yes, that is my company, and no, I have no trouble offering a shameless plug right now for my own company because I'm an entrepreneur, and my friends, that is good business. Odinson Archery. Anyone who's ever been interested in any sort of archery, getting into the world of archery, the Brotherhood of the Bow. Admission to the Brotherhood of the Bow has never been more inexpensive as it is with Odinson Archery. We make custom-made bows, whatever style paint you want, whatever style bow. We've got bows ranging from Mongolian style to Assyrian bows to Comanche bows to takedown bows to Japanese Yumi bows. All manner of different style of bow can be custom-made to your liking at OdinsonArchery.com. You can also get all the gear. We've got arrows, bodkin tip, armor-piercing bodkin tips. Where else can you find those? Armor-piercing bodkin tips, quiver systems, our oot lever release, all manner of things on OdinsonArchery.com. You can go there, you can buy your bow, you can buy a pack with all kind of different archery gear right off the bat, so you don't have to go around and shop all these different places. Check out OdinsonArchery.com, where you can find traditional bows made of non-traditional products. So today, my fellow barbarians, what are we talking about? Today, we are talking about something that is greatly lacking in this nation today. We're going to be talking about something that seems to have left our modern society. It seems to be something that not many people are employing in their day-to-day lives. We are going to be talking about courage. If you've listened to our very first episode, The Tao of Odinson, I talked about the 9 noble virtues of heathenism. For those of you who do not know, I am a heathen. I wouldn't call myself one of these guys that knows all the lore and, I can tell you this and tell you that. I use the heathen religion, if you will, the heathen mindset as a pattern, a way, basically a playbook in which I follow my life. And one of the very first things that is talked about in the 9 noble virtues, these 9 noble virtues that we follow, these 9 noble virtues allow us to basically live our lives in a noble manner. And I think, as far as, and maybe I'm speaking from a little bit of bias here, but I believe that these 9 noble virtues are superior to almost anything else out there. Yes, that's right, you heard me correctly. I do believe they are superior. And I've seen a lot of people apply these to their lives. And through these 9 noble virtues, I've seen so many people change their lives for the better. And for those of you who are just curious, I'll give you the 9 noble virtues here. Courage, truth, honor, fidelity, discipline, hospitality, self-reliance, industriousness, and perseverance. Those are fine qualities that will make your life better just by knowing what they are. Just by me exposing those to you right there. If you apply those 9 virtues to your life in every decision you make, as far as how you conduct business with people, how you conduct interactions with your friends, your family, the way you live your life in general, if you apply those 9 noble virtues, I can guarantee you that your life will be fruitful. It's just going to happen. And I know there's people out there hearing this right now they're already being the naysayers and everything. Well, let me tell you something, naysayers. And I know you're out there. You're listening right now and you're going, I couldn't do that. I know you're out there. You listen to this. This is for you right here. You naysayers. We're going to talk about you people later. That's right. You people. We're going to be talking about you later. Because it is folks like you that are just robbing the life force out of modern day man. Everybody talks about this idea of how society's become pussified, society's become weak and everything. Well, there's a cause of that. And there's a reason that I've always termed that courage is at the top of those 9 noble virtues. Because without courage, it is difficult to apply those 9 noble virtues to your life. Without courage, there can be no truth. Without courage, there can be no honor, no fidelity, no discipline, hospitality, self-reliance, industriousness, and perseverance. Courage is the thing that allows you to do all of those things. It's the same as with the Constitution or the First Amendment. The First Amendment is the basis of which all other amendments are derived from. Without that first, you can't have a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth. All of those. You cannot have it without the first. The first is the most important. And I don't know if when the 9 noble virtues were made that they had this intent, but I can tell you, my friends, I've seen it in my life, I've seen it through other people's lives. Courage is the defining factor that makes man what they are. And a lack of courage is what has made man what they are today. But since you're listening to this show, you're already telling me right now. You're telling me right now that you have a commitment. You have a commitment to have more courage in your life. You have a commitment to be better. That's why you're here. That's why you're not sitting out listening to some jackass show on TV. You're not sitting there right now. You're not watching Dancing with the Stars. You're not finding out what the latest sports scores are. You're not sitting around twiddling your thumbs, playing fucking Pokemon Go. That's not what you're doing. You're here. You are here, fellow barbarians, listening to the Barbarian Lounge, listening to Alan Odinson, and we're going to break it down for you today. So courage, let me take a little sip of my Mitacon. I'm a little fired up today in case you can't tell. Oh, yes. Good stuff. MitaconUSA.com. So courage, what is the definition? We're going to talk about Webster here. Mr. Webster's dictionary. What is the official definition for courage? Courage, the ability to do something frightening. Strength in face of pain or grief. That is what Webster calls it. But I have another dictionary that I go by sometimes, and I tend to find that this dictionary can be a little more profound than the public versions that a lot of people are privy to. See, this is a private dictionary. This is a dictionary I can go to get many definitions for many different things, and I tend to find that the definitions from this dictionary are far superior than what you find online. I like to go to the Dictionary of Morse. Shout out to my boy Morse, who comes up with phenomenal definitions for things. But I go to the definition of courage via the Dictionary of Morse. And that is the will to act regardless of the outcome. And I think that this is a far superior version of the definition of courage. My friend Morsi, I've known Morsi forever. I can't even think of a time in my life I have not known my good buddy Morsi. But Morsi is what you would call a bouncer, a doorman, someone who deals with asshole college kids, somebody that deals with entitled people, somebody that deals with fake IDs. These are the things he goes through on a daily basis, things that would drive you and I crazy, yet he thrives in this sort of environment. And as a bouncer, I've worked doors before, I've done security for a long time myself. But as a bouncer, or any sort of security, it is your job. In many cases, especially with bouncer stuff, you are quote-unquote unarmed, so you don't have a firearm on you. Yeah, there's probably other things you can employ, but we're going to go with the PC version and say that you are unarmed. So you have to walk towards, when they say this guy's trouble, you need to do something with this guy, or you have to remove somebody from a situation, guess what? It's your job. That's what you have to do. There have been many situations where I walk into horrible, horrible, horrible situations. Just terrible. Things that you're walking towards and you can see it in the distance. You can see that, oh boy, these people are going to be trouble. But guess what? You have to do it anyway. Do you have butterflies? Yeah. Are you scared? Yeah. Because that's what human beings... If anybody that tells you that goes into a situation like that they go into it without fear, they are a liar. They are a liar. I can tell you that right now, because if you don't have fear, you're not really locked into the situation. But the difference is that fear doesn't control you. And we're going to talk about fear a little bit later. But as any sort of security, you have to walk towards that danger. You have to have that will to act, even though you have to walk up to that guy. If you're, let's just say, of course, this doesn't apply for me or my buddy, but let's say you walk into a situation and you're a 5'8", 180-pound bouncer, and you walk into a situation and there's a guy that's 6'5", 300 pounds. There's a possibility that when you go to talk to this gentleman after he's had a little bit of liquid courage poured down his gullet, when you walk up to this guy and you say, "Hey man, you gotta go," there's a good possibility he may look at you and laugh and go, "Yeah, right," and he may throw you out the door. You may get your ass kicked. You may be a big guy and go remove a little guy, and he may stab you and run out the door. But you know what? Courage. The will to act. The will to act regardless of the outcome. You're still going into that fight, regardless of what horrible things could happen to you. Because a lot of times, that's what men have to do. And of course, courage also, I'm talking thus far as it relates to instances of violence or where you have to employ some sort of confrontation with people. But courage comes in many different forms. Most of the failures that people have in life with courage is not related to some sort of violent issue. A lot of times it's simple things. It's simple things like speaking in public. For some people, most people, I believe there was a poll taken a while back. I wish I had the numbers in front of me right now. If I was like other podcasts, I would just pause it and go look for shit and everything, but I don't do that here, because when I'm wired in, my friends. So, there was a poll a while back to where they were saying that of all the things, even over fear of death, that most people were more afraid of speaking in public than they are of death. And maybe even if those numbers flip, you're looking at number 1 and number 2. Maybe people afraid of death, fear of speaking in public, but most people have a intense fear of speaking in public. I know it's tough to realize that listening to me now, but that used to be me. When I was coming up in school, I don't know if they make kids do this now, but they used to make us get up in front of class and do a speech on whatever topic they would have for us. We had to research it, we had to get up there and do a speech. And I remember distinctly, it's crazy certain things you remember in life. I remember speaking in front of a class. I want to say I was in 7th grade or so, but I remember getting up and speaking in front of the class, and I'm up there speaking, and I feel like the speech is going pretty good. I got my note cards in front of me, and I'm up in front of class, and I'm speaking, and I noticed the people in the front row were kind of smirking. And I wasn't saying anything funny, and I'm thinking, oh man, maybe I'm not doing as good as I think I am. So the speech gets done with, and a few days later, my teacher is reading the grades out. And when he comes to my name, he says A+, and keeps right on going. And I was floored by this. I actually thought that I misheard him. So after class, I go up to him. I remember his name was Mr. Howell. I said, Mr. Howell, so when you were calling out grades, I said, I thought you said A+ on mine. Is that correct? And he looked at it, and he scrolled down and said, let me see. Yep, that's right, A+. I said, really? And he's like, yes, sir, that's right. He was a very professional type guy, a wonderful teacher. And he's like, yep, that's correct. And I said, huh. I said, was my speech good? He said, oh, your speech was phenomenal. I said, was my presentation always great? He said, oh yeah, it was great. I said, I felt like I was shaking. Was I shaking? He looked at me and smiled. He said, like a leaf. And that's the story of my public speaking. But where things really changed for me, a lot of people don't know this either. And granted, as I preface this whole episode, I am a heathen. I practice the heathen religion. I follow the Norse pantheon of gods. And yes, people are going, oh, that's funny. Oh, you believe in Thor? Yeah, the same way you believe in angels and Jesus and God and Mary and Joseph. So I was actually initially at one point in time, and I still have the licensure. It's in my closet, framed up, nice and pretty. I'll never get rid of it because it was given to me by my grandfather, because I had a tutelage under him. But I am actually still officially an ordained minister. Yes, that's right, an ordained minister. Yeah, isn't that something? But one of the things that I had to do as a minister was stand up in front of a church and preach to people, to develop a sermon and then deliver it to a crowd of people. There's not a whole lot of situations more stressful than that you're going to go through. And that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later, in just a few minutes actually, regarding methods of building courageousness in your life. This was something I had to do. There was no way around it. I had to get up and speak in front of these people. I had to deliver a sermon. And when you're getting up and you're talking to people about matters of spirituality, and you're in one of the most vulnerable positions you can possibly be in, to meet that fear head on, having that willingness to act regardless of how it's going to play out. I'd already seen other people in my class give their speeches, and quite a few, or I say speeches, because that's kind of what it is, deliver their sermons. And I've seen these people completely tank and break down up there. And then you have to go up, you have to follow that up the next week. Man, it's very, very stressful. I remember my very first sermon I delivered, I had things marked in my Bible. I had sermons marked with little dividers and everything. So I opened it up to that page, and I had messed up and had the wrong spot marked in the book. And I read the completely wrong verse, but you know what I did? I played it just like, I found some way to work that verse right into my sermon, and nobody realized that I had messed it up. It was pretty interesting. So a lot of times you can get up there and say a lot of things and people just amen and amen and amen you, so you can get away with it sometimes. I don't even think they notice. Probably half of them weren't even listening, but hey, it's good. But having that ability to get up there in front of people and speak is a powerful, powerful thing. And of course that translated later on when I got another thing people may not know. I'm going to do a show on this. I promise you it's going to be coming. I was also in professional wrestling for a long time. If you listen to the first episode, you know this. In professional wrestling, one of the things I was known for was getting on the mic. I was not always good at that. The very first time I spoke on the mic, because you don't have anything prepared when you go out there. Maybe some people do. I don't. I do it the same way I do my shows here. There's no preparation. It's just boom. You put me in the chute and launch me, and there I go. So I would get in the ring. The first time I did my very first interview in the ring, I thought it went pretty good. I get to the back, and I remember the wrestler. The wrestler's name was Crazy Train. Not a very good wrestler, but he was a nice guy. He would walk up, and he walked up to me, and he grabbed me by both shoulders and looked me in the face, and he said, "Brother, we're going to have to work on your mic skills." And I thought I did a really good job, but apparently I did not. Apparently I sucked really bad. So you know what I did? I went and I worked on my mic skills, and I became one of the top sells, one of the top bills, in the same manner that I'm taking this podcast to the top. I went to the top of that promotion, to the top of other promotions, and I did that the same way I'm doing it right here, by running my big mouth. So, another thing that goes along with courage is, I've talked about this ad nauseum as well, and it tends to come up in a lot of talks because I think it's also a vital thing. Another big thing with courage and having a courageous lifestyle is that there's a certain level of audacity that goes with courage. You know, courage and audacity, they go hand in hand with each other. A lot of times you have to just be completely audacious in your pursuit of attaining things. And a lot of times that courage leads to that audacity, because once you've got a certain level that you're willing to go to, nothing will stop you. A prime example of that I could think of right off the top of my head is Hannibal. When Hannibal was invading Rome, Hannibal was crossing the Alps with elephants. Completely unheard of at the time. And they knew that by doing this, they were going to put themselves in a horrible, horrible, horrible situation. Hannibal lost a lot of men. But it was the audacity behind that move that allowed him to do it, because the Romans never thought to themselves, there's no way this guy, nobody would ever try and cross those Alps right now. In one of the harshest winters ever. No one would ever try and cross it, much less with elephants. Guess what? Hannibal did. So, was it the best move? Well, maybe not, but still, he still had the will to act. He was willing to put his life on the line to perform such an audacious act against the Romans. Another thing would be the colonists. If you think about it, I was just thinking that the colonists, when they fought back against the British, no one had ever stood up to the British like that before and survived. It just didn't happen. One of the most powerful militaries or not one of the most powerful military in the world, and these ragtag rebels stood right up against them like it was nothing. Just having that ability to step out against the threat of eradication from the British, it was a powerful move, a courageous move. Another thing I think about too, as I said, as I prefaced already several times already, the fact that the gods in the Norse pantheon, the gods, they knew their fate coming towards Ragnarok. When Ragnarok, which it's not the same as the idea of the apocalypse that you hear in Christianity or the end times or whatever. It's more of a cycle. But the gods know their fate. Odin knows what will happen to him. Thor knows what will happen to him. They know their fate, yet when that time comes, they're willing to go forward and meet it. Because there's a certain level of courageousness that they use as a measuring stick that a lot of us really, especially for me, I look at the fact that these guys know their fate. They know what they're going up against. They know that they're going to die. But it's their duty. It's what they do. And even in a sense, yes, I will jump it back a little bit. Even in a sense, we see the same thing in the Christian works, where Jesus, before he was set to be executed, Jesus was in the garden and he wept. And he begged. He begged. He said, Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. He did not want to meet that fate, yet he also said it was his will. It was the will. He had to do it, regardless of how it was going to turn out for him. In the end, he knew. He knew what was going to happen. We're talking the supposed Son of God here. Still had this fear, yet he met that through a courageous act. So with building courageousness, I'm of the opinion that courageousness is something that you can cultivate. You can build a level of courageousness in your life. And there are certain steps you can follow to do this. I'll take another sip of my Mitacon. I'll just inform you guys every time I take a sip of Mitacon, MightyConUSA.com. But there are certain ways that you can go about building courageousness in your life. There are 5 steps that I have that have helped me throughout my life. I'm sure people can come up with other steps and everything, but these 5 steps I've seen in my life, I've seen them exemplified in my life. So we're going to discuss those. 5 ways of building courageousness in your life. Number 1 is fear inoculation. What do I mean by that? I mean exposing yourself to fear. Meaning that when you see fear, you drop your pants and you flash your genitalia at fear. And no, that's not what I mean. No, don't do that. When something gets scary, please don't do that. Don't tell them I told you to do that. No, exposing yourself to fear means that whenever you see something, whenever there's something that frightens you, your natural response, and it's a natural instinct. I'm not going to say that this is something that's unnatural that you do. It's a natural instinct to want to move away from that which scares you. What I am telling you is you need to turn around and march straight towards that fear. You get better. You'll get better at mastering your fear by meeting your fear. And I know this. Remember I talked about before with getting up and speaking in front of people. The more I did it, the more I got better at it. Now look at me. I can walk into any crowd right now, attach right to a topic and just smash it right there. When I was at, one of the things I noticed, and it's the ability of being a decent speaker and understanding how to work your levels of speech whenever you're talking to people. Just recently, I was at the Prepper Show in Columbia, South Carolina. I was there talking with some people, walking around, meet and greet, and all that good stuff. And I noticed I was talking to people about archery, and I was talking to them about different subjects. And before I knew it, I would be talking to 2 people, and that energy that I would build up would start spreading out around me. And before I knew it, I would have a crowd of people standing around me, asking me questions, listening to what I have to say, and it was all due to what I was projecting out in front of these people. And if you'd have seen me years ago, this would not be me. By nature, I was always a quiet, loner type person. And these are things that I've worked out. And the main way I've done this is through putting myself in these bad situations. Another thing, I have a bad fear of heights. What did I do? When I was in high school, we had a class called Project Adventure. And I said, a class of adventure. That sounds like fun. And so I thought, they're like, oh, it's a lot of team building things. I'm like, oh, this is great. Now, this was in high school, mind you. So I signed up for this class. The first day of class, they take us out behind the school into the woods there. And there's a clearing cut out where I see climbing ropes and a 45-foot wall and tight ropes and all this other shit like this. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I get involved in? And my first instinct was to go, okay, that's it, I'm dropping this class. But I didn't do that. I met that fear head on. Was I terrified? Yes. Did I ever want to do it again? No, I did not. But you know how much power I felt after doing those classes? I had such a sense of accomplishment when I would climb up to the top of that 45-foot wall and then attach myself by myself. Mind you, my teacher's on the ground. I'm all the way up. There's nobody up top but me. Releasing the rope and attaching it to my rappelling harness and then rappelling down that 45-foot wall by myself. There's a massive amount of power to be gained in that. And that's just through steadily inoculating myself in fear. Things that have always frightened me, those are the things that I want to do. And the reason being is once I conquer that, I gain power. It's like gaining energy. But you have to be able to meet that fear. You have to. Once you get this idea of looking fear in the eyes, whenever I think of the perfect example of courageousness, I think about that image at the beginning of the movie 300, where the Spartan boy is learning to be a man and all stuff like that. Well, he goes out into the wild and he's fighting this gigantic wolf and he's got a spear. And there's a moment where they're circling each other very slowly and they're locked eye to eye with each other. That's the way, everything that scares you is that giant wolf. If you turn around and run from it, that wolf is going to pounce on your back and rip you to shreds. However, if you're willing to stand there firmly, look it eye to eye and tell it, you're not afraid. I am not afraid of what you are going to do to me because I am here, I'm standing in front of you, and I'm here to meet you on this field of battle. If you're willing to do that, fear has no strength over you. There's a certain level of consent that you have to give to that fear. Fear is everything. I always hear the term, especially when I talk about prepping, people say, oh, you're spreading fear. That's fear-mongering, or all they do is promote fear. And listen, fear is completely user-based. You decide what you fear. That's completely it. You decide what you're afraid of. I can give you information. If you decide to be afraid of it, I can't control that. It's just information. You're applying an emotion. You're applying an emotion to that information. So I always love to hear people talk about, oh, you're spreading fear. My first response is, what are you afraid of? Why are you afraid? Well, I'm not afraid. Well, you must be, because you heard that information is fearful. Information is meant to be empowering. Even if I tell you, think about this. Think if when Paul Revere would have been riding through the town there saying, the redcoats are coming, the redcoats are coming. What would have happened if everyone would have rolled over in bed and went, that damn Paul Revere spreading fear. Oh, my God, he's spreading fear around here. I don't know what's wrong with Paul Revere. Wish he'd go back to drinking behind the pub. That's a little inside joke if you know a little bit of history about Paul Revere. But instead, what did they do? They heard that information, and they said, oh, my God, the redcoats are coming. Let me get my guns and meet them. That information was empowering to them. Information, you apply the narrative as to what emotion you take information as. If somebody sees it as fearful, I may see that same information as empowering. Another way of good fear inoculation that I found throughout life is through competition. Different sorts of competition, competing in things, going into things that I was afraid of, going in, especially when you're going into fights. I've done amateur and professional, both MMA and boxing, done some tough man fights and all these different things like that, grappling competitions, professional grappling as well, where we were paid money if we won, and those get exceptionally violent because we're talking cash here, right? I mean, somebody might not break a guy's arm for a gold trophy. There's a lot of guys that will, but some people might not break a guy's arm for a gold trophy. But they'll snap that thing off and wear it around their neck for $1,000. So but being able to put yourself in scary situations and conquer those, that builds up a massive amount of courageousness. Another thing, another phenomenal way, number 2, step 2 in developing courageousness is being able to enter problem-solving mode. And I tell this to people quite a bit. This is something I really realized recently. There's a phenomenal video. If you ever have the chance to get your hand on it, I recommend it to everyone. It's a movie. I think it was created by Panteo Productions by a firearms instructor, former Special Forces gentleman named Paul Howe. Paul Howe was involved in the Black Hawk Down issue that happened over there in Mogadishu. Paul Howe has a video called Combat Mindset. It is a phenomenal video, and I got this mindset, or added this to my already skill set just by hearing him talk about this and how it's helped him to get through issues over there against unsurmountable odds, that he still had the ability to work. And it was because he would enter problem-solving mode. You didn't have time to think about fear. It's problem-solving mode. When you put yourself in problem-solving mode, it is your ability to critically analyze the things that are going on around you. So you say, like, I'll give you an example of what he said. He's like, okay, they were in such and such building, they had to get through here. So the first problem that they had to solve was, how do we get from here to there? So they would say, okay, lay down cover fire, we're going to cover these guys, they move, they get there, they're going to lay down cover fire. Boom, 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 everybody moves and gets there. That problem's solved. Next problem, what's the next problem we have to do? Okay, we got to get those gun nests over there where we got some insurgents. They're hunkered down over there. We got to take that out. So let's do that. So when you put yourself in problem-solving mode, Problem-solving mode gives you the ability to analyze everything around you, and you do not have time to think about fear because you're thinking about how to solve these problems that are in front of you. Most things that people get afraid of are nothing more than problems that need to be solved. Once you have the ability to start critically analyzing the things around you, you don't have time for fear. You don't have time to think about these things around you. It's basically a way that you can start to deconstruct all of these things around you that are going to rob you of your power, that are going to rob you of your ability to meet these things head on. I tell people, whenever they have issues, I've had people tell me, man, I lost my job, or man, this happened, or whatever. And I would always tell them, if they knew me, they would know what I'm talking about. I would tell them they need to go ahead and enter problem-solving mode. An example, for me, when I walked out of the job I hated, which I talked about on here a couple times. When I walked out of that job, the first thing I did was immediately go into problem-solving mode. Okay, how am I going to pay my bills? Okay, I need to do this, 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 and this. And I did it. And guess what? Started making money again. Then I had another job that I lost. Guess what? Problem-solving mode. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this, 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 this. So I didn't have time to enter this state that everybody gets into where they're like, oh man, I've lost my job. How am I going to pay my bills? Oh man, how are my babies going to eat? No, there's no time for that. There's no time for that. You enter problem-solving mode and you start solving problems. The same thing goes for any sort of stressful situation. Even if I'm in a gunfight, when I've done force-on-force training, this is what I do. When I start finding myself getting bogged down by the fear, or you start feeling yourself starting to freeze in place, guess what you do? You enter problem-solving mode. Okay, what's going on? All right, I'm pinned down. How do I get out of here? All right, let me look around. Let me figure out a way out of here. These are the things you start thinking about. By doing this, fear has no time to be there. You have to maintain this internal dialogue in your head. For me, that's very easy because I constantly have multiple voices going off in my head all the time. So it's very easy for me to maintain this sort of internal dialogue. Maybe that was too much information. Maybe I shouldn't be telling people about my multiple voices in my head. So yeah. Forget I said that. You need to create voices in your head. Yes, there we go, create voices, because that's something I need to do too, because I don't have any voices in my head. So, a good example for me would be, a while back I entered a 3-gun event. In this 3-gun event, now I had zero experience in 3-gun. When I was a teen, I actually competed in the IPSC and the IPSC competitions. Nothing fancy in there. I didn't have all the fancy red dot scopes and everything. I just shot with iron sights. But I did it in a little teen division. I didn't really do well in it, but I've gotten a lot better. I just did it because my dad was doing it at the time. That's the kind of childhood I had. So I wanted to be like my dad. And I just decided, I got this thing in the mail that said there was a local 3-gun event coming up. I didn't even know the rules for 3-gun. But you know what I said? I said, man, I bet that's hard. I think I'm going to do it. So I went to this 3-gun event. I show up there, and there's people with all of this fancy gear. I'm a competent shooter. I train a lot. I practice a lot as well. So I get to this event, and there's local people there. It's just a local event. I get there, and what do I have? I've got my AR. I didn't even have a red dot on it at the time. I went and bought like a $30 Tasco red dot from Walmart and slapped on the top of it, got it zeroed in and everything. It actually wasn't zeroed in perfectly because it was literally like the day before when I did it. I had that. For my shotgun, I had a stock TriStar Cobra 12 gauge pump, spring loaded, pretty cool. But luckily it already had ghost ring sights and all that good stuff on it. Nice fiber optic front. And I took my everyday carry Glock 19 with the XS Big Dots. And I show up to this 3-gun event, and all these guys got all this fancy ass gear and everything. So I was like, okay, well, let's see how this goes. I mean, I'm not losing anything if I lose. So I watched the people running the event, and I'm analyzing my competition, as everyone should. I'm watching these people, and I noticed right off the bat that a lot of these guys aren't in phenomenal shape. So I say, okay. So when it come time for me to go, I go out there and I burn the course up. And what I mean by burn it up, I mean I'm like, the 2 targets at 100 yards of the rifle, pop, 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 pop. I'm working them over, putting 2 rounds in 4 targets, reload 4 more, or 2 more in the 4 targets each. Put the rifle down, sprint to the 12 gauge, boom, 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 burn it up, reload, boom, 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 and I completely just hit it like a hurricane. And what I did, my accuracy score was not as high as some of the people that were just really with their tricked out gear and everything, but what I did was make up for it in time and speed. But I had enough accuracy, and I was able to, I didn't miss anything, but it was just, there's a few of them that just weren't quite as good as the other ones. I didn't miss anything, but I was still able to defeat these people who had better gear just through my sheer level of conditioning, my will, and that audacity to run this course hard. It was a very scary thing. It was a scary thing to go out there and meet these guys. I didn't even show up. I left my mag pouches at home, so I had mags stuck in my back pocket. I had cargo pants on, had my spare AR mag stuck in my back pocket. So it was just that ability to go out there and just smash it. But the thing is I had run these scenarios in my head throughout the whole prior to the thing coming up. I run these things out in my head. I had a general idea of how the course was going to run, and I had it mapped out in my head that this is what I'm going to do, and I practiced the reloads and everything like that, and I just made sure that my superiority was my speed, my audacity, and my gun handling were the things that, and I went out there and won this 3-gun event. I only won it by a couple seconds, but I won it, that little couple seconds was enough with stock gear. I didn't have anything special that made me shine or give me any more advantage over everybody else. It was the stock gear that I carry around today with me. Number three is a concept that I picked up from Sayat Kali. I tried to come up with other terminology behind it, but I don't think anything is as powerful and as easily digestible as this term from Sayat. And it is be the feeder. Be the feeder is quite simply just controlling the situation. I'm sure I might be bastardizing some of this to some of the Sayat brethren out there. If I do, I apologize, gentlemen. I'm going to give my interpretation on some of this, but basically it's controlling the situation. You're going to be the guy that's pushing the buttons in there. Basically, the terminology goes in everything, every confrontation. Of course, it expands further than just knives, but I'm going to use it in the manner of knives. If a guy is attacking you with a blade and you are defending against that blade, he is the feeder, you are the receiver. You're receiving, he is controlling the situation. However, it is your job to flip the bill on him. And even though he is the quote-unquote attacker, you are going to flip the bill, and you are going to become the person who is pushing the action. You are going to become the person who is feeding him. So you're no longer defending, you are actively attacking his attack. So you're becoming the feeder in that situation. And for me, I use this in a lot of different things. Job interviews is a big one. Job interviews, I talk to this about people, when I have people discuss with me about going to jobs, I give them this concept, talk about being the feeder. When you're the feeder, when you go into that, if you go into a job situation, a job interview, or even if you're going on a business issue where you're discussing business with somebody, I always like to go into it with the mindset of being the feeder. I'll even say it in my head as I'm approaching, be the feeder, be the feeder. The thing is if I sit there with my legs crossed, my arms folded in, and I'm sitting there going, yes sir, yeah, well, yes, we've got these nice bows that we're coming out with, and, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to go down, I want to sit down, I want to make myself appear big. Not that that's very hard. Make myself appear big. I want to use a good commanding voice. I don't want to sound like I'm dominating, but I want to sound like that I'm also in control of this situation. Just that mindset alone will get you out of their feebleness that a lot of people get into when they get around people with perceived power. I find that a lot of times, especially in job interviews, that if you go into the job interview with a commanding type of presence, that you're there almost as if you don't necessarily need them, they tend to respect that a lot because that shows a level of dominance. It shows a leadership quality that a lot of places are looking for. And it's not necessarily, when you're talking about being the feeder, you're not necessarily talking about being some sort of control freak that wants control over everything. No. That's not what it is. But it's basically just operating on your own terms. This is how I'm going to do things. This is how we're going to do things right here. And a lot of times you'll find that if you take over as that feeder, the person who may have initially been feeding you, say like a boss or something, when you take it over, you in turn become that feeder towards them, and they're the receiver. Of course, we see this in fights a lot of times. Fights especially, you see guys, when guys lose, they kind of sit back and they're letting the other opponent dictate the terms of the fight. Like if you got a fighter that wants to keep it at long range and you just can't, you're just not getting inside to get inside his range to put it in a range you could fight in, well, you're letting him be the feeder, you're being the receiver. But as soon as, take Mike Tyson, for instance. Mike Tyson would get guys that would come in there and they would say, okay, everybody had the same strategy for fighting Mike. They would say, all right, you need to establish a good jab, keep him at a distance, and don't let him get inside. Mike said, fuck that. Mike Tyson didn't throw no jabs. Mike Tyson's jab was a bob and weave to get inside. And he would always put the fight in his range. And he would always become the feeder in the fights, and that was why he was so dominant, because people were just overwhelmed. They could not fight on his terms. The only times he ever lost was when other fighters were able to dictate the terms of the conflict. We see the same thing taught with firearms instructors as well. When you have guys military trained or whatever, guys that are trained tend to have this mentality. You can tell it automatically. As soon as gunfire breaks out, these guys are the ones that want to go towards the gunfire. I see this tons of times, especially if you've got say like an active shooter, and the active shooter's going around, boom, they're shooting people, they're the feeder, everyone else is receiving. They're receiving hellacious bullets through the air. That's what they're receiving, and they're running for their lives. But as soon as that one guy who happens to be concealed carrying that day, because he believes in the concept that we've talked about numerous times, no more days off, and he's carrying his gun, he's trained with his gun, he's proficient with his gun, and he's ready to stop this piece of shit that's out there shooting people. You know what that guy does? That guy draws his weapon and he starts going towards the gunfire because he's there to stop them. Automatically what happens? Now you see the attacker was looking at, his whole goal was to be the feeder, and he was going to have everybody else receiving. Well, as soon as he starts receiving, and he's no longer the feeder, you're going to see his dick start to shrivel up very, very small, because he's getting afraid. He knows right now that he's met someone who's not afraid of him. We see this a lot with military. Military guys taught me, the guys I've talked to, they're trained to go towards the gunfire. And that's something that's a level of courageousness right there in itself. People say, they're like, oh, how do they do that? I can guarantee you that these guys have went through fear inoculation. I guarantee you at that moment they're in problem-solving mode. And they're also being the feeder in that confrontation. Another sip of Mitacon. Number 4. Another thing I've talked about a lot, training. People are going to listen to this and get tired. Man, he's always telling us to train. The reason I'm telling you to train is because most of you are not. That's why I'm telling you to train. Training is the ability to learn and apply, or learn to apply, specific principles, techniques, tactics, mindset skills, all these different things like that. Do not get it confused with going, say like in shooting, people will go to the range and they say, I'm training. You're not training. That is not training. Because you are not learning a skill there. You are not going there to learn to apply certain techniques and tactics at that moment. You're going to put bullets down range. By receiving training, this already puts you ahead of the curve of most people. I tell guys this all, they're like, man, I don't want to spend all this money on training. Training's so expensive. And I tell them, I say, look, just by taking a class on basic fighting pistol class, by taking a basic pistol class, you're already far ahead of the curve. You're already learning gun handling, which that's most of what these classes are teaching you, is proper gun handling, not dipshit hillbilly drinking behind the shed gun handling. No, not this. This isn't hood rat gun handling. No. You're learning proper gun handling. You're learning how to handle that weapon in a martial sense as it was intended. But whenever you spend this money on training, this is an investment. This is an investment. You're investing money in yourself. You're investing money in your future protection. You're investing money in your ability to be better at what you're currently doing. And that may just be, this sort of training may even come just in, maybe we're not even talking about a martial sense where you're taking a fighting course or a handgun course, something like that. Maybe you're learning medical skills. Maybe you're learning better public speaking skills. Maybe you go to a public speaking seminar. Maybe that's what you're doing. Maybe you're a mechanic and you say, you know what, I'm going to go take this class on I don't know, fixing whatever the hell on a car. My wife, who's a licensed massage therapist, she takes continuing education courses where she learns other skills that she can apply to her trade. Chiropractors do it. Some doctors and stuff do it as well. So this is the training. This helps you become better, but this is investing in yourself. So you have to ask yourself, if making yourself better, if you're going to invest in yourself, what's the price that you're willing to pay to make yourself a better person, to further increase your proficiency in the area in which you are living your life in, whatever it may be, or just making yourself better? Training also builds confidence because you're out there actually on the field. You're actually in the midst, and you get the chance to actually train and apply these certain things under the watchful eye of an instructor and find out why you need to do it this way, why this is wrong, why this is correct, why you can get away with doing it a certain way. It allows you to get a feel of the game. There's a lot of instructional classes that you can take. We're in the era now of the information age where you can actually take classes online. There's instructional videos you can learn from. All these things are available. So once you get the chance to actually get out there, man, it's a phenomenal thing. And I cannot recommend enough for people to seek training in whatever field they want. We have this common misconception that, I tell guys with firearms training, I like to use this as a good example. Firearms training, they say, well, I've been shooting my whole life. And I could take these people and watch them. I can say, all right, hand me that pistol over there. I can watch how these people pick a gun up. If they just pick it up, hold it, and set it back down on the table, I can tell how much training they've got. Pretty much about that quick. Most firearms instructors will tell you this, just by the simple manner in which they handle the firearm. This is something you pick up in training. But the main thing to remember about training, that I can't stress enough, is it is an investment on yourself. The last one, number 5, is practice. Yes, this is the difference between training. There's a difference between training and practice. When I use the analogy of going to the range before, that wasn't training, going to the gun range is practice. Going to the gun range is actually, as I said before, training is an investment on yourself. Practice are the payments made on that investment. Meaning you could go and take the training class, but after you leave that class, you have to practice these skills. You have to keep making payments on those skills until you can actually own that skill. So a lot of guys will take training classes and they'll be really into it, and they're like, oh man, this is amazing, I love it, and they'll practice maybe 2 or 3 times, they're like, oh, I got it, and that's it. And that's not the case. You give them a few years, and all that stuff starts failing again. You have to keep continuous practice, and that's the ability to actually apply that training regularly in your life. You have to be willing to put that practice in so you can own. These are the payments. These are the payments on your investment. Until you pay it off, you're not going to own that skill. You see a lot of guys, I tell people, your practice a lot of times, that's your reps. That's your reps. But you got to get the reps on the correct patterns. A lot of people practice incorrect patterns, and they get a lot of bad reps. So you have these, it's like, oh, I've been shooting forever. And I'm like, well, your grip's actually been off for 10 years, and you're flinching like crazy. So that's what, 10 years of bad reps? 10 years of poor trigger control? It's the same with like guys. I see it in the martial arts world where guys like, oh, I've been boxing for 10 years. I'm like, oh, really? Cool. And I watch them throw a simple number 3, which is a jab cross hook, and I see them go jab, and they throw that cross, and then when they throw that hook, guess where that cross hand goes? It goes down to their pocket as they throw it. I see that immediately, and I go, oh boy. So we've got 10 years of bad repetition right here. So you want to make sure training ensures that you learn the correct patterns, practices your ability to apply them. So those are the 5 ways that you can start cultivating courageousness in your life. Now at the same time, as there are ways to cultivate courageousness, there are also 3 main stealers, the thieves of courage. These thieves of courage, they're pretty obvious, but still a lot of people don't recognize them when they start rolling in. But once you learn to recognize them, I've talked about this till I'm blue in the face, quite literally in many instances. I get pissed off sometimes trying to explain this to people, and I look like a fucking smurf by the time it's done with. But the idea is, if you recognize this threat, recognize that which is out to get you, you learn the tricks to the magician's act, you're no longer fooled by it. You recognize it in the distance. So now let's talk about these thieves of courage, that which may sneak into your life and snatch the courage right out of you. These are the 3 courage stealers. Number 1, the biggest of them all, fear. It is the basis of all failure. Fear is the basis of all failure. I cannot tell you throughout my life, before I really started to get a hold of my life, cannot tell you how much fear held me back from doing great things if I'd have recognized this fact long ago. People have been telling me for years I needed to be on the air. People have been telling me for years I needed to start selling bows. People have been telling me for years I need to teach people martial arts. People have been telling me for years all these different things that I could do to make my life better. And you know what stopped me from doing it? Fear. Fear was always there. Until I was able to recognize this fear and call it out and say, I see you. I see you, fear, and I'm here to stand in your face. Until I was able to do that, nothing was getting any better for me. And I blamed everybody. I blamed this person, blamed that person. Oh, people aren't doing this, and then no, there aren't any opportunities. And I was embracing that victimhood mentality that is pushed in this world today. But all that is based on is fear. A lot of people's fear, I tend to find, are based off of, some of it, you could say it's credible. A lot of it is ridiculousness. Such as, people are afraid of what's going to be said about them. They're afraid of the impression they're going to make. What will people say? What are they going to do? What are they going to do once they hear this? Some people are afraid of injury. Some people are afraid of death. All of these things start chirping away in your ear. Chirp, 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 chirp. In your ear, you start hearing these things, and it starts to become easy to talk yourself out of doing things. It becomes very easy. It's very, very easy to convince yourself not to do something you're afraid of. And this is where start taking those 5 steps that I talked about earlier, start playing a key role. Really, death is one of the biggest ones that frighten people. And, I'm sure everybody's different, but it's funny how everybody gets all religious and talks about whatever religion it is they follow, yet they're adamantly afraid of death. For those people, I say, where's your faith? After all, is that not the goal? What sort of legacy are you leaving here? A legacy is built off of accomplishment. A legacy is built off of things you have left here for other people to remember you by. Are you going to leave a legacy of power? Or are you going to leave a legacy of shit? Are you just going to be another cog in the wheel? Or are you going to be the wheel? Courage is the thing that makes us have that ability to climb to the top of the mountain. And a lot of people will say, I like it down here at the bottom of the mountain. And maybe that's for them. But you know the main reason that our goal is to climb to the top of the mountain? The reason that we are climbing to the top of the mountain is because the bottom of the mountain already has too many people standing there.